Hello, LinkedIn, and welcome to a new LinkedIn Live session, Q&A session that we're going to have today. It's my great pleasure to welcome Pier Luigi Sigismondi, the president of Dole Packaging, with us today. Thank you for joining, and Pier Luigi delivered a very interesting keynote presentation as part of the Makers and Movers Summit on sustainability and supply chain. I'll give a quick introductions for some of you who might not know yet Pier Luigi. So he's been working for more than 20 years in the intersection of purpose-led brands and value creation for the business. He's a strong believer of the proactive role that companies can play against climate change, social equality, and inclusion when doing business. And as the president of Dole Worldwide Packaged Food, which is a 169-year-old brand, he's leading a profound transformation with a vision to make it an iconic nutrition and wellness company. Prior to Dole, Pier Luigi was the president of Unilever for Southeast Asia and Australasia. He had several jobs in Unilever, including chief supply chain officer before that, and he also worked for Nestle before Unilever. He also has served as non-executive director of Rexel Supervisory Board, was a board member of Ben & Jerry's, and since August 2020, this year, he was also appointed as non-executive chairman of Sustainir, which is a vertical farming startup based in Singapore. So without further ado, Pier Luigi, thanks for joining us, and pleasure to have you.
Likewise, Radu. Thank you for hosting me here.
And as always, people on LinkedIn watching this, post your comments, post your questions in the comments, and we will ask Pier Luigi. We got a lot of questions, or some questions that was specifically linked after your keynote on the topic of sustainability is a big thing, is an important thing. However, in the context of COVID-19, some companies have put it a little bit, or there's a perception that they've put it on the back burner. Just before we went live, I was reading that Bain put a study that actually says that is the other way around, that actually it's even more top of the mind. So I guess the question is, how do you see this from your perspective, Pier Luigi? Is it becoming a nice to have? Are companies doing even more? Is it the same in the context of COVID-19?
Listen, this is the very first story that humanity shares at the same time. If you think about it, even in World War II or in previous pandemic events, they were always limited to some regions, continents, but never with such a massive global scale that has truly affected millions and millions of people. For the first time, to my knowledge, this is the very first story that is shared by everyone in this world. And I think it provides a profound reality that needs to make us think how we do business, how we take care of ourselves, and how we drive a meaningful job that can somehow make a difference in this world. So putting the humanity tragedy aside, COVID has been a good crisis for us. Because it has allowed us to accelerate the pace of change, to pivot into new areas, new categories that we're now entering very quickly, to take aside all the nonsense that comes with PowerPoint and what I call the intellectual obesity or the PowerPoint obesity that we often face in our business, and then just get on with what really matters. Now, I'm trying to be too generic on purpose so people can take a message home. But I would say certainly it has given us a very crude sense of what it means to make very simple, very drastic, very quick decisions in a life that can be very short, that can and a crisis that can affect everyone. So, yeah, I think our company is doing well. We're doing record sales this year. We have a supply issue, not a demand issue. We could grow much more if we had more availability of raw materials, but certainly we are taking advantage of this crisis. And we believe that it's far from over. I think this is going to be an extended situation, an extended reality, no matter how optimistic we are about the vaccines which are now in place or being announced, by the time these will get distributed, we're talking at least second half of 2021. And in the meantime, a lot of suffering and a lot of issues will happen in the economy, in society, in every single angle of this war. So lots to keep working on.
Absolutely. And we have a question, and I want to pull it up from Oliver Hurry, who's praising you for your initiatives that you undertook back in the days at Unilever. And I guess the question is a question that a lot of people struggle with when it comes to selling sustainability or getting the buy-in from their CPOs on sustainability. Maybe share a little bit your views on this.
You can drive change by being philosophical and dogmatic about why is it that there is so much waste that could be converted into nutrition or could be converted into animal feed or products that can be benefiting others. For us, that journey was fantastic because it all started in India when we went to visit one of the biggest slums in Asia called Dharavi, where we saw the crude reality of many women, children, men that were having a living out of the waste that we generated as a company. Now, on one side, this is quite dignifying because you could say at least they're earning something. On the other side, we saw the very sad reality of children collecting and segregating waste from landfills. And we said, we cannot be part of this tragedy. So as a leader, you would be always tempted to preach and expect people to follow. What we did instead was to see and feel in our skin what it means to put waste on landfills and say, we don't want to live a life that we feel that can be much better. And throughout that exposure, we converted ourselves very quickly. Then the fun started because we said 255 factories around the world. Let's see who's going to be last in still disposing waste to landfill. So there was a fun and quite energizing competition. So everyone could participate. And we had great leadership from members of my team who put their heart into this and engaging with universities, management trainees, and then always being there to support others to make it happen. So leadership is not something that comes at top management levels. Leadership is expressed by anyone in the reality of their jobs. So I think I said to Oliver, it doesn't matter where you sit and to whom you report. I think you can always, when you do things with passion, you can find always the narrative and confront people with realities that will allow them to convert. And certainly there is the heart and there is the mind. Human beings make decisions emotionally, which then are justified with information or data. And I think in our case, it was exactly that. We took the decision of not having our products in landfills, and then we started calculating how much could we save by reducing waste, how much could we actually help others, and then the numbers came in, and that's when we were unstoppable because we combined logic with magic and emotions, and things happened in a record time. We said by 2015, and we ended up concluding a year earlier, having all the sites around the world with no waste to landfill. And from there, things keep growing because we said no more factories. Now let's go for warehouses. Let's go for offices, R&D centers. And it just became a movement internally and externally as well. And that's what, I mean, if I look back, I would say out of the few things that I'm proud in my career, certainly I thank Olivier for bringing this back to my great fond memories because it was a phenomenal transformation.
And I'm gonna take this question from Jonathan Pierce, because this is another pushback. I think we should address these pushbacks because it's a reality that a lot of people face, I guess, internally. So how do you convince investors that being a purpose-driven organization is not at the cost of profit?
It's great to see Jonathan again in this event. Long time since we exchanged and we met last time. I think today sustainability or purpose can be really quantified in terms of returns and on the investment. Long are the days when we had to invest ahead of returns. There are many analyses that prove that either more demand is generated by belief-driven buyers that want to buy only or mainly brands with purpose. I think on the supply chain side, a lot can certainly be eliminated in terms of cost if you drive a green energy and a green supply chain. I think investors more and more are talking, not walking yet, but talking about the triple bottom line, which is planet, people, and prosperity. They call it profits. And there are many cases that you can actually make. Now, at the end of the day, you need to make the analytics work, because no investor will only do it out of, leap of faith. But there is evidence out there, Jonathan. You can certainly make the case. Today is much easier than in the past when we started 10 years ago. You only need to surround yourself with great minds that have been there before, and the case will be made.
There is another question from Ole Schack Petersen that I'll pull out in terms of, I guess, transportation and the impact that it has. And obviously this year, airlines have faced a fairly significant drop. But how do you see this question, Pier Luigi? And do you see more and more production coming closer to the markets? Also to address this, so what's your thoughts?
You don't start generating value in a business by thinking how to reduce transport. I think transport is necessary, and I would say is part of doing business. And as you build scale and efficiency, you'll be centralizing more, whether it's manufacturing or distribution. So it's unavoidable. Now the question is how green and how smart. And green, because there are technologies today that allow us to transport with much higher, not lower temperatures if you have cold supply chains. My invitation is to open your eyes and engage with startups and many companies out there that have a lot to offer to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. I believe in global supply chains, and I believe also in total greenhouse gas emission reductions, not just in transportation alone. Of course, if you move into intermodal transportation, if you have, the Uber trucks on land transportation, there is efficiency and scale you can generate by, transporting more volumes with fewer deliveries. But I think the big equation is when you start looking at your total footprint, and I think that's where you might find that there are other areas that can certainly make a much bigger difference. And that's what I learned in my past. Transportation and manufacturing were only 2-3% of our total CO2 emissions footprint. We realized that working with partners, i.e. suppliers, and also looking at how we actually engage with consumers made a much bigger effect, including waste, by the way, in greenhouse gas emissions than transportation alone. So short answer is plenty of technologies today available that can reduce emissions. Yes, you can redefine your distribution network to reduce cost, and that also comes with lower emissions. but think outside the box and then accept regional global supply chains as a way to do good business. And if you do good business, you will be sustainable as well, which is what matters as well.
And I want to ask you, Pier Luigi, in terms of vaccines, and obviously you need cold chains sometimes for your for your products, and the spike that will be once the vaccine does become available for distribution, there will be a lot of capacity that will go that way. Do you also foresee some challenges in terms of your supply chain with less capacity all of a sudden available on the market? Do you see any impact to Dole and to your business, or how do you see things moving in the next 3, 6?
No. I mean, if you look at BioNTech and Pfizer's, I mean, they talk about -70, -80 degrees transportation or cold chains. I assume that will be with liquid nitrogen. I don't know how this is going to happen. Certainly far from transporting foods. Even Moderna talks about -10. So the supply chains are very stressed today. That certainly is the case. Not because of the vaccines, because clearly they are being still produced. Early deliveries are happening now, but because of the immense amount of volume increase that has happened, the health concerns about labor and what it takes to hire resources which are limited. I think every great supply chain professional will always have to think about building resilience in the business, and that's why I value this profession, tremendously, because I learned on my scheme lately that many times you give supply chain reliability for granted, but that has to be consequence of a great strategy behind that builds 3 components. One is adaptability. The other one is predictability, and the last one is resilience. So it's a no thank you job, as I always said when I was myself running the supply chain. But you need to be predictable, no surprises, something no one likes. Even though it's a book award, you can always, plan for the worst and aim for the best. So at least you can manage bad news and be prepared for it. We need to be adaptable, which means changing quickly scenarios based on latest fluctuations on demand, on supply, on partners not being always there. Right now, we're shifting a lot of our supply base from Southeast Asia into Latin America to supply North America. So that speed of change is a good AQ indicator, which is I call adaptability coefficient. And then the last one is obviously resilience. So you need to build contingency plans. You need to understand that cost is not the only dimension that you need to drive for value, but ensuring service, ensuring revenue generation is, in my scale of values, much more important than cost alone, because any missed delivery is missed generation of margins, and often they are much more damaging for the business, short and long term, than those extra basis points of transportation or manufacturing costs you might want to be saving for the sake of being more and more efficient on a per case or per ton basis. Yeah. So think always like a P&L or CEO would think, and I'm sure that you will be highly valued, more than just as a cost center. You'll be valued as a value creator in the organization.
And I want to probe a little bit, and we've gotten a few questions, and your profile is quite unique in a way, Pier Luigi, because you made the switch. You were Chief Supply Chain Officer, then you were P&L holder within Unilever. Now you're, again, P&L holder. You're the leader of the company. How was that for you, right? How was it? Maybe some tips and tricks in terms of adapting, if any, and just your story in general.
Sure. Yeah, I think it comes with the clarity of what makes you click. So for me, it's all about impact. and meaning of the job that I have, right? So for me, there was a point in time. I started my career being on the shop floor working on night shifts in an aerospace company. Today, I'm selling bananas, and I say that always with respect and love for my job. But I'll come back to this in a minute, because you can make your job meaningful no matter what you do in life, and it doesn't need to sound sexy to be meaningful and impactful for the world. But having said that, I'm an engineer by nature, computer scientist. So I could not be more programmed in my brain to be repetitive, predictable, and clearly systemic. But I also had the curiosity to get myself involved in creative work, in dealing with the old parts of the business. So what I did, as well as I was growing in my career, was always asking myself, how will I do the job of my boss, and how can I learn from his or her mistakes, or the good things that they do. So as a supply chain person, you have the amazing advantage, like also finance person has, to get yourself involved in many aspects of the business that are just beyond your comfort zone, which is the functional excellence that you have to provide. So I was always expanding myself into other areas, marketing, sales, and then finding reasons to provide help or offer help, so I could learn more in other areas which were not my own. And it was clear for me in my career that that's what I wanted to be. After I felt that I had lived and experienced many of the great aspects of being a supply chain head, I felt that I needed to prove myself into a comfort and a discomfort zone, which is managing a business, managing being a general manager. And those were the choices I made in my career. Now, it's a big wall to jump. Clearly, you need to have people that know you more than what your CV says, and that flexibility in mind to understand what it takes to make heartfelt or gut-felt decisions, and not just analytical-driven decisions, because the adaptability is very important. And then just keep yourself exposed to areas that you are not necessarily an expert, so you can learn from your colleagues. And then from there onwards, think that you could get there by being a CEO, perhaps, or finding, steps back in your career that will have to reset yourself in terms of titles and levels. In my case, I never had to do that, but I was willing to step down if I needed to, in order to, keep expanding my scope, rather than only feeling that I was having a great life in the supply chain space, which is huge by nature, by the way. But the way I value people is not just about the depth they have, but also the breadth in their decision-making skills. And I think that's what I will advise anyone to keep stretching all the time. That's why you always should ask yourself, what decision will I make if I were in that person's role? And that is a continuous learning process that I've been through.
And I want to double click a little bit, if I may. And it's a little bit like, also jobs is like, when you're prepared to have a kid, and, you can read a lot about being a parent, but, the reality is that there's always going to be things that you didn't know, and nobody can prepare you on. So I want to see what were those things. Obviously babies are a different ball game, but when you became CEO for Unilever for Southeast Asia and Australasia, right? And when you became for Dole, what were some of those things that kind of maybe, forced you to fast track your learning?
Well, first and foremost, you need to always be authentic and declare openly that you are involved now in areas that you don't have major experience on. Don't pretend that you know everything. Be focused more on the quality of your questions rather than in giving answers all the time. So in my early days, by the way, I was destined to be general manager for Nestle in Latin America. And that's when a role came for me to be the chief supply chain officer of Unilever. So that was a very difficult decision for me, because at that time already, back in 2009, I was on my step to become a general manager. And that would have been a major step down in my levels in the company, because I wanted to invest for my future. But then the supply chain officer role came, and it was impossible to say no to such an amazing adventure. But when I was just thrown in as a general manager in Southeast Asia, you need to be very honest and authentic. Same as when I started as a chief supply chain officer of Unilever. And this was a multiples more complex job that I ever done in my life. People know in a second whether you know what you're talking about, and they know in a second whether you're being authentic and honest, intellectually, but also in how you exercise your authority. So accepting the fact that you don't have all the answers is the very first step for people's acceptability in your new role. Second, it's about being there to help. And humble enough to, put yourself really on the front lines very quickly to learn what the other professions are about. So whether it's legal, whether it's taxes, whether it's some areas of finance, treasury, whether it's obviously on sales. So people admire and accept the fact that you are there to learn from them. And then if you're honest about your background, you will learn very fast. Now, you have to ask yourself, what kind of value am I adding to the organization in this new role that I have? And how can I make a difference? There was a time before me, and there will be a time after me. So for those who are jumping into a complete new uncomfortable zone, you need to be clear about what is going to be the agenda that you would drive in order to make a difference. Stay true to yourself, and then surround yourself with the best people that you can trust, not the ones that only say yes, and they will be happy to make you learn fast and support you along the way. And that's what I did.
Excellent. Some real gems here. And in our work as executive search, and a lot of people ask us, why not more chief supply chain officers to CEOs? And there's been studies, and I think there's obviously a couple of gems like Tim Cook, like Mary Barra, like there's been a couple of, obviously yourself, right? There's a couple of people that have stepped, but still there's not as many as we could, right? And when you look, to your point, when you look at the depth of the profession in terms of understanding the business, being connected to all the different departments, and the actual getting of what's going on in the business, probably the supply chain professionals are the most connected. And however, there's certain things that we had a last summit, and then the consistent thing that seemed to be missing is storytelling, or the ability to tell a story in a way that can engage people better and can engage the CEO and can put, the supply chain professional maybe to the forefront for the executive role. So I wanted to ask you, what's your view of what are some of these maybe soft skills that need to be honed in the profession to better or to have more CEOs coming from supply chain?
That's a great question. So you need depth to be credible, but too much depth will make you a specialist. And the question that you need to ask yourself is, where do I find the most pleasure in the way I exercise my profession? So, and there is nothing wrong in being, the most respected person in the industry from a quality assurance point of view. James Deming actually created a whole culture of total quality management, and he changed the industry. So you can still be a specialist and enjoy depth and still be relevant in your job, right? But in order for you to be a general manager, which is what a CEO is, a general manager, and I will underscore general, you need to be comfortable in dealing with uncertainty. You need to be very flexible in the way in which you define alternative options and scenarios. Have the ability to listen. And the most after adaptability trait that you need to display is judgment and how assertive you are in understanding what's happening in the business. And that's a skill that you learn as you expose yourself to these kind of realities. Yeah, we humans tend to jump immediately or stay in our comfort zone, which is to to stay in the areas that we know. As we age, it's more difficult to learn, and that's for me. Learning and innovation it's a sign of or it's an investment for your longevity. So you need to keep yourself up to date. Curiosity, adaptability, and assertiveness are elements which you certainly need to exercise. And these are muscles you develop over time. We are born as very curious beings, and education, environment, sometimes parents, without wanting to, they kill that curiosity. So we go quickly into our comfort zone. So I'm preaching a little bit of the obvious, but for those in my team that I will want to take my job one day, I don't have the preconceived idea that you need to be a good storyteller. Actually, that's quite dangerous. I don't want to believe that unless you're a good marketeer in my industry, you can be a CEO. That's a dogma that has been demonstrated not to work all the time. For me, what matters the most is how you exercise your leadership. How do you build traction in your organization? The charisma that comes with authenticity, and the soft skills of caring for people. As you understand your environment and adapt very quickly, and also make decisions which are driven often by your listening skills, but also by your instinct. And that's what makes you a general manager at the end of the day. Now, these are soft skills you cannot write on a CV. And that's why networking, it's absolutely essential. So you need to invest time in forums, in relationships, in building your black book of people that you know and the people that know you, because these opportunities will come out of those that know who you really are, which is not something you can put on paper. And that's when you're given the chance and the trust to run a P&L, which brings huge risks, but at the end, like trusted relationships between humans, you can always make mistakes, but if you're balanced and assertive, you can minimize them. So invest in your network, and move yourself out of the comfort zone, because those are the two key investments you need to make in your own career if you want to go there. Yeah.
And we have, we have a younger listener, and I'll put her question, Erna. I think she's just starting her career, and I guess that's her question. But maybe I would frame it in a way of what are some of the gems, right? And you've shared already a lot, right? But the young people that are just starting in supply chain, and the supply chain right now is a lot more dynamic, technology driven, industry 4.0 driven than it was maybe 20 years ago. The principles probably are the same, are the same. But what would be some pieces of advice, if you may share, to this younger generation, Pier Luigi?
First of all, you need to ask yourself, what is what I like about it? As I said before, supply chain is a no thank you job. When things go well, it would be the merit of someone else. When things go bad, you get exposed, and then you are the reason why things do not happen in the business. So like some professions, and others are much tougher than a supply chain manager, you need to be driven by your passion for what you do. And that's not just in supply chain, but everywhere. So to the person that asked the question, I would say, ask yourself, what is what I feel attracted about a supply chain profession? Is it building things? Is it about the technology that is behind? Is it because I like to see the bigger picture of a system in terms of how it operates? We're often carried by circumstances in our lives. Your parents tell you, I think it's better if you study engineering because there are many jobs out there that will be most likely available when you graduate. And I'm not joking. This is the kind of culture I was raised with. So I think you need to own your own destiny, and then feel that there is something inside yourself that takes you out of bed, that allows you to or enables you to love the smell of the oil and the machinery. If you're in a manufacturing environment that is very tough, by the way, or if you are in a warehouse, or you are in an office doing demand and supply planning, or dealing with procurement activities. So it's sincerely as simple as that. There is no secret, because what applies to supply chain applies in finance and the rest. Now, you certainly need to have depth and breadth. You cannot just be intuitive in a supply chain role. You need to have a good component of analytical skills, problem-solving skills, and those are essential in my view, because a supply chain professional is a problem solver, or someone that predicts problems and avoids them. And I think you need to ask yourself, do I have those elements in my fabric that I can really explode or exercise more? Yeah. It's a bit of a generic answer, but that's. I remember I was a little boy in Caracas in Venezuela when I visited a juice factory. And I still remember the bricks being produced on the line. So I love the complexity of all these industrial systems and how they were all combined and producing this huge amount of volumes in products that I loved at the time. So for me, transforming things, converting things, is the reason why I went for my profession. I became an industrial engineer because I love the notion of creating and transforming things. So that's how my profession originated. Yeah.
And I want to also ask you, Pier Luigi, because it's quite different environments. Let's just compare. Okay, Nestle, Unilever, huge, MNCs. Dole is also huge. It's also global, but it's a different flavor, right? So I guess I would want also to go into the element of cultures and shaping culture as a leader, and the differences in between the organization. Maybe you can share a little bit your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So first of all, Dole is just a fraction of the companies you mentioned. And I say that with love for my company, because at my stage in my career, size wasn't that beautiful anymore. I was looking for an environment that would give me freedom to learn, to make mistakes, to play a sandbox that will allow me to experiment and just to try out things and surround myself with great people that felt that life in big corporate environments was enough. And we wanted just to be insurgents with scale. I mean, it still is a 2.5 billion business, but nothing of the sizes of Unilever and Nestle. So it gets to a point in your life where you value more how much you can expand the role that you inherit rather than the size of the role itself. That comes with the integration of your previous steps in your career. So being in an environment that like Dole, where you have a global supply chain that is truly sourcing raw materials from all over the world, was an exciting part for me. But more exciting, or as exciting as that, was the notion of reviving a brand that has been, as you said in your kind introduction, has been in the market for over a century, and was fading away, declining slowly but surely. losing relevance in modern times. So how can you bring back the image of a brand like Dole, which needs to be transformed again, re-energized, and make attractive to young consumers, not just only the grandmas who are now using our pineapples in Thanksgiving, which of course is fantastic, but not what excites me at the end of the day. So we are transforming this company into a nutrition and wellness company that wants to be relevant in the space of health in new categories that we're now investing on. And I felt that was a much more exciting role than being ahead of another region in a big multinational. Yeah. So although you tend to build arrogance in your life when you are in these fantastic big companies, and I'm very proud and I have fond memories of both Nestle and Unilever. I think they are phenomenal companies. That size often puts you in a blind spot and it makes you arrogant. I think that for me, the change was putting me in the reality where I felt I needed to create something new, was transforming, a great business that was on a declining mode. My personal purpose in life is built to last, and I felt that we had a great business that wrote history in consumer goods that was not actually building itself for a future. And where now we are finding ourselves growing again, and it's just a very energizing story, which is only the early days of a great transformation, and the best yet has to come. Yeah. So for me, we all need to ask ourselves: am I doing something that is really what takes me out of bed every day? Even if I were not to be paid in the job, will I still do it? And what is my personal purpose that is consistent, compatible with what the company wants to achieve? And if you find that alignment and that great chemistry, you're going to do your very best, and that's when the results will come.
No, that's very well said, and I want to. We're having a lot more questions, but I will take you offline in the interest of time. I want just to share this comment that came in and pretty much goes around. Summarize the book on leadership in 5 minutes. Thank you, Pier Luigi. So some great gems, and I really want to salute your authenticity and your candor and your honesty, Pier Luigi, and obviously. You've seen a lot in your career, and I think this has been extremely helpful for all sorts of levels. And we often see, and as headhunters, we see people that at different levels. And there's a big, obviously, you spoke about maybe these big machines and these big corporates that serve a very good purpose, but at the same time, at some point, people want something else, and a lot of them I've seen are a bit afraid, are a lot afraid, because you feel like, oh, I don't want to let go of all my status and my whatnot and step into the risky, murky and whatnot. And then you see people that are maybe in companies for another 3, 5, 10 years, and they're not really, like you said, they don't have the fire in the belly anymore. They don't necessarily go and at it, but they kind of back to the comfort zone, if you so wish.
Yes.
So very inspiring what you shared, because I think all of us should strive to be a little bit more adventurous.
Yeah, I grew up for a lot of time in my career thinking that bigger and bigger was better and better. So bigger company, bigger roles, bigger organization. In Unilever, I had a team of 110,000 people, and that was like, wow. So just the notion of being the head of such a huge team gave you a sense of pride. But it gets to a point where your learning curve, your intellect, your capacity to reinvent yourself becomes very limited. And that's what you need to watch all the time. Are you too much in your comfort zone? And if that's the case, you might be starting to decline without you knowing so. So for me, size is not any longer necessarily relevant. What is relevant is the impact that I can create in the company and in the business and in the world. And business, I meant the industry. And I think that comes with entrepreneurialism. It comes with innovation. It comes with that sense of ownership of your own company. That is the reason why you have so many people, bright students coming out of the Ivy League in North America, going straight into startups, because they want to have that freedom of invention. And I think that's in my view what's relevant. Of course, you want status, you want salary, you want standards of living, which come with bigger jobs. And I don't regret every single step that I've taken in my life, but I think that I still have another 20 years to go where I will feel much more fulfilled if I can help many people just to do something that can leave a legacy in this world than just having a great title on my business card. Of course, I can say that because I lived that reality. But I am convinced that bringing back a brand and a company to the relevant minds of great consumers is an amazing challenge. So the challenge itself can be as big as your ambitions are. So you don't have to limit yourself. If the system around you is limiting you, then you have to change. Now, for me, you as an executive search firm, and to all the friends that are joining this call, I would say there are three big elements that I would really value when I assess whether I can have members in my team. First is ambition, because we all need to have great dreams, and we should not fall shy in saying, I want to be a CEO of a multinational one day. So having dreams and ambition is no sin, and we should state them clear and loud. With the conviction, though, which is the number two, of being humble and displaying humility, which means understanding what are your limits, what are your development needs. I don't call them weaknesses. I call them development needs. So you can stay grounded as you keep looking at the sky, saying that's what I want to go, but also knowing that I'm here and I need to invest in myself if I want to get there. So humility is an important essence that I assess. And then the last one is self-confidence, because you can be very humble, but if you don't believe in yourself, you're only going to be a follower in your life. So that self-belief, that confidence, that will allow you to just take bets on yourself as you remain humble and you keep aspiring for more in life. It's the great cocktail of leadership that has worked for me. And even though it's been 29, I don't know how many years now, 30 years, I still apply them every single day. And I still measure those in every person in my team. I hate arrogance. Too much self-confidence leads to arrogance. Too much humility leads to lack of followership. And I think too much ambition makes you greedy as well. So it is the balance of the three and the sweet spot of those that will make you an exceptional person. And that is something that you can cultivate in your life every single day. So I don't know how much that helps, but hopefully that would be a good message you can take with you after this call.
No, absolutely. I can, you'll see the comments at the end of this, so it definitely helped. And I must personally say that this has been an incredible sharing session, Pier Luigi. So personally, I want to thank you for your authenticity and your openness, and also the way that I think, just the message that you portray is very simple, and obviously it comes from many years of experience, and you've lived a career that maybe many dream of. But at the same time, the simplicity in it, which I guess we as humans also we have a nature of, if it's simple, it can't be the right thing. It has to be a little bit more complex. We are looking for that silver bullet that will I mean, I know I have been for a while that we shortcut everything. There's got to be something that is gonna give it. But in reality, it's principles, day in, day out, exercising these muscles and putting the work. And I think some brilliant pieces of advice from you. So I want to thank you with that. It's been a pleasure having you. Stay healthy, keep inspiring, and keep having a great journey at Dole.
Absolutely, yeah. And don't forget that being simple is not the same as being simplistic. So there is a big difference on the two. And some companies have built great brands by being simple, but it requires a lot of depth at the end of the day. So thanks again. It's been a great session. It allowed me to go back to my past and also project the future. So I loved it. So all the best and good luck to those attending.